I don't want to scare anyone, but I'm going to give it to you straight about Jason.
Golden Spiral Media presents the Friday the 13th rewatch.
Jason, Mother is talking to you.
Join Cory and Nathan each week as they slash their way through campgrounds, woods, Manhattan, hell, and space as they discuss another installment in the Friday the 13th franchise.
Hey, wasn't that the road up for Camp Crystal Lake back there?
Send us your feedback at goldenspiralmedia.com/feedback. Like our Facebook page at facebook.com/rewatch podcast. And follow us on Twitter at rewatchpod.
Legend has it that Jason came back to get even. Every now and then, the murders just start up.
Today we're discussing Friday the 13th, starring Jared Padalecki, Danielle Panabaker, Amanda Rigetti, Travis Van Winkle, and Aaron Yu, with Derek Mears as Jason, directed by Marcus Nispel. Welcome back to the Rewatch podcast. I'm Cory, and I have perfect nipple placement.
And I'm Nathan, and in my next life, I want to come back as one of the buttons on the arse pocket of her jean shorts.
Charming.
I know. I was secretly hoping you would have said, today we're discussing Friday the 13th starring the guy from Supernatural, the girl from The Flash.
And a bunch of other people that we don't know.
And a whole bunch of other people I've never heard of since. Hey dude, can you hear the Friday the 13th fatigue in my voice?
Yes, we're here. We're at the end. They did this remake and have not made another film since.
It's true, but we'll talk about that, won't we?
But of course, before we get into anything, we want to remind our listeners that we are part of the Golden Spiral Media Podcast Network. Send us your feedback at goldenspiralmedia.com/feedback. Type out your thoughts or leave a voice message using the SpeakPipe widget, or you can call 304-837-2278. And also head over to facebook.com/goldenspiralmedia and follow on Twitter at GSM Podcasts. Okay, Nathan, shall we check out the trailer for 2009's remake of Friday the 13th?
Let's go for it.
Did you know a young boy drowned here? He was my son. And today is his birthday.
You won't believe my parents' cabin.
Here we are. Pretty nice, huh?
Just get your ass to my door and don't ready?
I'm not from around here, but I'm looking for my sister. She's gone missing. Have you seen her?
She ain't missing. She's dead. People go missing around here, they're gone for good. There's something out there.
We gotta get out of here. Come on, you guys. Oh my god.
This place is called Camp Crystal Lake.
His name was Jason, and today is his birthday.
All right, welcome back. That was the trailer for Friday the 13th from 2009, the remake of the original, apparently. So this film was released on Friday the 13th, 2009, in 3,105 theatres in North America. It had a budget of $19 million, and it actually went on to gross $91.3 million. According to Box Office Mojo, it was domestic $65 million, and then it only made $26 million worldwide to do a total of 91. So it did okay. I don't think it did gangbusters, but it did okay. Like, I suspect they would have made some money from this, but the fact that they haven't made another film since rings alarm bells that perhaps they didn't. What do you think, Cory?
It's interesting, because if you remember back when we were talking about those original films, they were doing like 10 times their budget in returns, right? And it slowly petered off. And now here we are, we're at the remake, and I guess they kind of felt that people were wanting to see this, a reboot of this franchise. And it's still kind of just sitting around where it always was there at the end, maybe about fivefold thereabouts. So yeah, I guess it's really just something that got sold to the hardcore fans and maybe just didn't speak to the casual viewer.
And you know what? The hardcore fans certainly showed up, because in its opening weekend, it made $42.2 million. So I reckon when those weekend figures rolled in for this film, the producers would have been rubbing their little hands together. But when the second weekend showed up, there was an enormous drop-off. I think I read somewhere something, I don't think I've got the figures in front of me right now, but I think I read it was like 81% drop from the opening gross, which is huge. So this film did not have legs, did it?
No, yeah, I was reading all about that. It was fascinating. It's like one of the biggest second week drops ever in film history, especially for horror films. It just tanked that second week.
Yeah.
So it makes you wonder, did people see it, go out, and maybe it just got a bit of bad word of mouth out there?
Did the Nightmare on Elm Street remake, that hadn't happened by that stage, had it? That was a couple of years later, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. They kind of did a bit of a rollout on these remakes, and that came a bit later.
I also kind of think there's probably a little bit of fatigue amongst the community. I mean, let's be truthful for a second. Nightmare on Elm Street, I think there was 8 films, I believe, between the first one and the last one. Freddy, there was 12 films, including the Freddy vs. Jason remake. The Halloween series, I think they made 7 or 8 of those things. So the concept of creating low budget kind of slasher films and actually just totally getting the most out of the brand was not uncommon, was it? So it wouldn't surprise me that the audience was maybe perhaps fatigued with all of these kind of monster kind of films. And truthfully, $19 million, as much as that is not a huge budget, maybe they should have made this for $5 million. And that's seriously, that's probably where you're kind of at. It would actually be very interesting if they gave the Friday the 13th series to that Jason Blumhouse guy who makes those $5 million, The Conjuring and all those kind of films. He makes all these horror films for only $5 million and makes a huge profit out of them and just keeps churning them out. Apparently he's got a really hard and fast rule where he'll give total A-grade creative control to whoever the director and the producer or whatever it is, but you cannot go over the budget. The budget is what it is. You can't go over it. So you don't get interfered with, and they keep making really quality kind of content. So maybe this series needs to go down that route. Don't you think?
Oh yeah, I tell you now, would I rather see this $19 million remake, reimagining, whatever you want to call it, or would I prefer to continue to see an ongoing series of films made on a $2, $3, $4, $5 million budget, something like that? I would prefer the latter, people who can just take it, have their creative control, just like it was back with the originals. New people would come along, they would add their own twist or take to it, and it is what it is. If it's low budget and full of nobodies, who cares? As long as the filmmakers and the writers have their creative control and put out something somewhat interesting, Sure. I would love that all week long.
And don't misunderstand me, the film's not that bad. We'll get into it. It's not that bad. But I don't know where the $19 million went, because there's no... Seriously, there is... apart from the supernatural guy, which I can't imagine he would command that much money, but I could be wrong. He might have got a couple of $1 million out of this, and if he did, then all the more power to him. But there's no known actors in this film. There's about 3 locations and a couple of sets. It's really not that big a film, but I mean, to be fair, it's a good looking film, and there's a lot of set dressing and production design, but they probably could have done this slightly cheaper, yeah?
Absolutely. So you were saying about Blumhouse before, which is, you know, a great company. They make fantastic films. This film is produced by Platinum Dunes, which is Michael Bay's company.
His name popped up, and I actually wasn't expecting it, because I hadn't done my research prior to watching the film. I just watched the film cold, which is what I try to do, but it doesn't always work out. So when I saw Michael Bay's name, I was a bit surprised that he was attached to this.
Right.
But, yeah, it's interesting.
Same company that put together the reboots of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. That's why we've got Marcus Nispel here as the director. He directed that reboot. The director of the sequel, or the prequel one, Texas Chainsaw The Beginning, was approached to do this as well. Again, Platinum Dunes. But you'll also see that both New Line and Paramount are listed in the production company logos at the beginning. And this is the first time that Paramount has come back to the franchise since Part 8, which is quite interesting. They actually did work out this deal to co-produce between, you know, the rights that New Line had bought and the rights that Paramount had retained. And, you know, Platinum Dunes wanted to do this reimagining with license to pretty much have all the content that they possibly could reference. So it was good that they managed to work out that arrangement, you know, between the two companies. Because, you know, we were talking back when... you know, on the lead up to Freddy vs. Jason and the whole rights issue and stuff like that, and, you know, what New Line ended up buying after Part 8. So, yeah, it was quite good that, you know, these 3 production companies were able to come together to put this together. Now, did they make a good film? Well, that's what we're going to get into, right?
yeah, that's exactly right. So apparently Derek Mears is the new Jason Voorhees in this series. He's actually the 8th actor to portray the adult Jason Voorhees, following Steve Dash, Warrington Gillette, Richard Brooker, Ted White, CJ Graham, and most famously Kane Hodder. And then in the last film, in Freddy vs. Jason, Ken Kersinger took the role. So as of this movie, Hodder is actually the only actor to have portrayed the character more than once, with 4 films under his belt from 1988 to 2001, famously, as we've discussed many times. So I'm going to just get it out of the way right now. What did you think of Derek Mears as Jason Voorhees? He was different, wasn't he?
Very different.
Yeah.
Like, I struggle to find the words. You know, is this Jason, or is this something else? You know, have they, by doing a remake or a reimagining, it's hard to call this a remake because it's really not a remake of the original. Well, Jason's the killer in it, and that's not who the killer was in the original.
Not at all. And they do something at the start of the film that totally threw me. It's like, what is that? Anyway,
we'll get to that.
Yeah.
So, you know, I start to call this a reimagining. And, you know, I kind of feel like maybe in this reimagining, they kind of went a bit too far and maybe created something else. You know, yep. I don't know what this killer is, but I don't know. They've changed it drastically, and I don't know if this is Jason, or is this just Jason in name.
It felt a little like Jason in name for me, because according to the co-writer Damien Shannon, the character of Jason Voorhees is actually re-envisioned as a more kind of territorial, like a hunter, somebody who doesn't kill people at random, but will just defend his territory from anyone invading it. Derek Mears says his actually portrayal of Jason is more as a survivalist, more along along the lines of kind of what John Rambo did in First Blood from 1982. And, you know, I see that comparison. So if I have the capacity to remove the previous 11 films from my psyche and not think of Kane Hodder and all those other people, I'm just going to be truthful. I actually thought Derek Mears was actually pretty good as the killer. I can't lie, Corey. I really enjoyed his physicality. He was quick, this guy, and menacing. I felt like he had like a real kind of presence about him, which I did personally enjoy. Like, it didn't really feel like the Jason we knew from the previous 11 films, but if they are just calling this a reimagining or remake, whatever you want to call it, it did work for me from that perspective. And you know what, if they made another one of these films and Derek Mears came back to do it again, it wouldn't really bother me, yeah?
Well, you know, I can agree with you to an extent, I guess. And I guess we'll just get into that more as we get into the film. There's parts of it that I like. Let's just say that much.
Yeah, cool. Now, apparently Adrian King, the star of the original 1980 film, was actually approached by producers Andrew Form and Bradley Fuller to do a cameo appearance during the pre-production of the film. And there's a big fat but here. A few days later, the producers actually called her back and told her that they didn't want anyone from the original film to appear in the remake. So I actually thought that was a bit shit, actually, when I read that.
Yeah, you know, this is like really interesting, that the background of all this, you know, people being approached to do cameos, Adrian King being the big one. She hadn't been in a Friday the 13th film since her character was killed off at the beginning of part 2, so that would have been quite the coup to get her back. I know that Betsy Palmer was approached to reprise her role again. Again, she said no, but, you know, again, there's this whole thing about them not wanting any people back. So, there's a lot of stuff in the background to this where they wanted to pay homage to the originals, but then they didn't. And, you know, as we're going to find out, this isn't really a remake of the original.
Not really,
This
no.
is more of a reimagining with elements probably taken from about, I'd say, the first 4 films at the very least.
Yeah, you're right. It's kind of this weird kind of remake, reimagining, but they keep referencing a few things here and there, but it's not. It's a bit hard to say. Now, what would have caused it to be a genuine sequel is if they brought back the character Tommy Jarvis, who last appeared in Part 6 from Jason Lives, Friday the 13th, Part 6, and he did not die at the end of that film. So we don't really know what happened to Tommy Jarvis, and there was actually talk of actually bringing him back for this film, but for whatever reason they chose not to, which is, I don't know, man, it kind of would have been a bit of a nice to kind of see that character back. I mean, he was the only true nemesis to Jason for 3 films, although you could argue that in number 5, Jason wasn't really Jason, was he? He was the ambulance driver.
Yeah, well, it doesn't even have to be a sequel with Tommy Jarvis. Like, they could have just made the main character Tommy Jarvis, you know? And I completely think that was a missed opportunity. I can't believe they didn't do that. Like, if they want to pull elements from those original 4 to put in this film, then sure, make the main character Tommy Jarvis. It would have made a hell of a lot more sense than what we do get in this film, which is Jared Padalecki and Danielle Panabaker from The Flash. So it's weird. The interesting thing, though, you were saying before about Jared Padalecki being on Supernatural, he was on Supernatural at the time. And during the hiatus of the show, he came and made this, while his co-star, Jensen Ackles, was in the remake of My Bloody Valentine.
Have you seen that film?
I have seen that film. It was out. It did come out just a little bit before this film, if I remember correctly. All right. But yeah, that struck like right at the beginning of like the 3D craze. Like before Avatar came out, they were starting to sort of trickle out 3D movies. Yeah. And My Bloody Valentine was one of it. It's an okay film, probably just as okay as what this film is.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but Supernatural's still going, isn't it? Aren't they still making it?
They are, yeah. If you want to... Yeah, I know. I saw it this year. They're like season 12 or something. And I was like, yeah. I gave up on that show about season 6. If I'm going to catch up on it, I'll have to watch another 6 seasons.
Season 13, and it's one of those stupid shows that has 22 episodes a season. I'm going to say right now, Corey, that I've got exhaustion from shows that do that. Anything that's more than 10 or 12 episodes, it's got to be pretty good for me to get into it, eh? And it's like, I just don't have the time. Who has the time to watch 22 episodes of several seasons every year? It's just crazy.
Yeah, but also Jared Padalecki did show up in the 2005 remake of House of Wax, if you saw that one.
Yeah.
So, interesting.
Anyway.
All right, shall we get into our discussion of the film?
Let's do it.
Okay, so looking at the timeline, just throw it in the garbage. This is completely new. As far as I understand, it's set in 2009. I don't think there's ever a mention of it being Friday the 13th. It starts at one point anyway, and then cuts to like 6 weeks later. So who knows?
You're just making me laugh with the concept of like how like when things were set in the future, so, like the timeline of the previous film. It's just ridiculous, isn't it?
It really is.
Anyway, it is what it is. So you're dead right. Who knows exactly when we start, but the plot opens on June 13th, 1980. And a young Jason Voorhees watches as his mother, Pamela, who's actually played by Nana Visitor in this. Now, Nana Visitor is the girl from Star Trek Deep Space Nine, the woman that plays Kira Nerys. Do you know who I'm talking about?
No, well, you've watched more Star Trek than I have. I've only watched the original series and TNG.
Anyway, so Nana Visitor is the right-hand woman, I should say, to Cisco. She was also the character that got involved with the character Odo. Do you know who I'm talking about?
Oh, okay, yeah. Okay, from episodes I've seen, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah. Anyway, so this was her big moment in the film series to play Pamela, and she's actually beheaded by a camp counselor who was trying to escape Mrs. Voorhees' murder spree around Camp Crystal Lake. Now, I'll be truthful with you, Corey. This moment took me a few minutes to kind of just get my kind of bearings. I had no idea what was going on, who these people were, why we were in 1980 all of a sudden, and it only dawned on me a little while ago that after the camp counselor, who I'm assuming was playing the Adrian King character.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, is that's like a pseudo Alice.
Yeah, pseudo Alice, and she beheaded so famously in the first one that they were actually trying to reenact that. And I thought, I don't quite understand why they didn't just use the original. Like, if you're going to go to the trouble of taking the storyline from the first film, just use the first film's scenes. Like, it wasn't that bad. Just use it. It wouldn't have made any difference to me as a viewer, and it would have probably saved them, $1 million to do, or whatever it took. You know what I mean?
I've got to ask, the fact that the original film is about the killings done by Pamela Voorhees, and we've got this movie, it's called Friday the 13th. Would you have been satisfied to see a remake of that first movie where Pamela is the killer? Like, no Jason in it?
Probably not. Truthfully, I mean, it's only kind of a curious. I mean, the first Friday the 13th film for me personally, and I know a lot of people have different opinions, is not one of the better ones in the series for me. I remember kind of watching it and just thinking, oh, it's fun. I enjoyed it. I can see why they kept making movies and it made a lot of money and stuff. But from a story perspective, it was a bit thin, I thought, anyway. So, and when it was revealed at the end where Mrs. Voorhees was actually the killer and not Jason, and then they did that really stupid thing right at the end when Jason jumps out of the water, and they kind of allude to the fact that he's been living like under the water for a long time. You know what I mean? It's just really strange. But this is definitely not a note-for-note remake of the first film. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they're trying to add a little bit more logic to the story here. And what I ended up taking away from it was Jason presumably died in the lake, and then Mrs. Voorhees immediately went on her murder spree, killing all the counselors and whatnot. So these are the counselors responsible for supposedly her son dying, right? That makes a bit more sense.
Can you even remember the counselors from the first film? Actually, that's something we forgot to mention in the trivia. According to my trivia, and I could be wrong on this, but Jason had killed, including the 2009 remake, Jason has killed 167 total people throughout the Friday the 13th series.
That is pretty impressive, right?
That's a lot, isn't it?
Yeah. But, in the original, it was like, it happened in the 50s, and then she takes her revenge on these people returning to the camp. And I think in this one, it was just Jason died in 1980. She immediately took her revenge, Alice killed her at the end of all that, but it turned out, hey, Jason wasn't dead at all. And he becomes this survivalist guy, right, out in the woods. Now, that I'm fine with. That makes sense. What I don't get is where we go next. Because we're going to have this opening scene of all these random teenagers going out by that old camp.
Yep.
And two of them seem to know that there is a whole shitload of pot out there. Yep. Whose pot it is, I don't know. Could be Jason's pot. He's been growing pot and selling it and using those funds to make tunnels under Camp Crystal Lake or whatever the fuck he's doing out there.
And all his travelling that he does, don't forget in Jason number 2, doesn't he travel to wherever Adrian King is leaving and living, I should say, and stalking her and doing all kinds of things.
Flights are expensive.
Flights are expensive.
Could have even taken a Greyhound, who knows? But he needs money for that. So
he grows pot on the side.
So somehow these guys have gotten secondhand knowledge from whoever that there's pot out there. They're going to go out there to go and steal the pot. Then for no reason, they invite Whitney and her boyfriend and then this other hot chick and tell them that they're going camping. So these guys know nothing about the pot. And now they're all just getting set up to have sex and get slaughtered.
Oh my lord! And do that. Like seriously, this film is full of sex, full of it. Everyone is doing it in this film, and there's a lot of nudity, definitely, throughout this whole film, but that's okay. But you're right, you got these two guys who their sole intention is to get to this one location so they could cultivate the marijuana that's growing on the property, remove it from the area, and then obviously go and be drug barons. And they're idiots, and they're not very smart people, and they keep bringing all these extra people along to kind of get them involved somehow, which is really, really weird. It's like, it's not a very good plan. So they set up camping, and the thing that kind of bugs me too is that they tell a story around the campfire, and one of the guys has knowledge of Jason. He knows about the killings in the area. So again, they're kind of alluding to the fact that there's been at least 3 or 4 films or several different events that have turned this one character into like local folklore. Maybe Crazy Ralph got in his ear, man. What do you reckon?
I don't know. But you're right. As soon as like he starts talking about Jason and stuff, I was like, how does he know this? Like, unless Jason in this world is an infamous killer who's been killing people for a long time and there's tons of stories about him, then, you know, maybe there's stories. But you know, as this film's set up, it's just that Mrs. Voorhees was killed, Jason witnessed it, and now he's just been out here growing pot or whatever. And somehow this guy knows about Jason and his exploits, like, out of nowhere.
If the concept of Mrs. Voorhees and the old Crystal Lake in 1980 was thrown out the door, and this film was literally about a survivalist similar to Rambo that was just running around killing people, I think that would have been a lot more user-friendly from a Jason perspective. Like, I actually didn't mind the idea of Jason being a survivalist and just, you know, protecting his territory, and anyone that comes near it, he takes care of. I didn't really mind that concept so much, but I just kind of felt like they just clouded it with the baggage from the previous films. I mean, let's be truthful for a second, man. This film series is not strong for its continuity. So why all of a sudden try to like make it work? If you're going to start fresh, get rid of the past, keep the hockey mask and all that kind of stuff. But that's about it. Yeah. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. And you know, the fact that, you know, we start the film with the camp and everything as well, like, they throw that away after this opening, right? They have this whole thing about how he's at the camp, and then suddenly it's like tunnels under the camp and stuff like that, and I'm like, what the hell is this?
So what happens? You got these teenagers that are kind of set up camp. 2 of them kind of go exploring, you know. So these 2 kind of make their way to like an old house in the middle of nowhere, and for it, they think it's a really good idea to go in and start poking around. And clearly there's people's things there, and I mean, yes, it's abandoned from like a long time ago, but it's not entirely sure that there's no one actually in the house. And they're just kind of, you know, charging straight in. So they're kind of going through all of, Jason's personal things, and he finds like a locket, and he opens it with a picture of the original Mrs. Voorhees, and I can't remember the guy's name, but he kind of says to the girl, look, you look like a lot like her. Check this out. And they kind of go side by side, and she does a little bit, So that basically snowballs the rest of the film. So essentially, Jason shows up, goes on a killing spree, kills everyone at the camp. They're just kind of showing up to kind of steal the marijuana in some terribly gruesome kind of ways. But for whatever reason, and we don't know this at the time, actually, to be truthful, I shouldn't reveal it at the moment, because at the start of the film, you assume everyone gets killed. I don't recall Whitney getting taken away, do you?
No, it actually, it goes right to the point where he's just about to hit her with a machete. Full tilt, coming down on her with a machete. That's when it cuts to the title. And I am like, there is no way he did not kill her.
No.
But, let's just give it away now. She's not dead.
She's not dead. She's not dead.
Yeah.
Which is kind of crucial for the rest of the film. But to be truthful, there's actually not a whole lot of story for the rest of the film. I mean, let's keep going. So
No, actually, I wanted to go back to, all the kills that he does here, because I have to say, this is where I like Jason the most in this movie. Is when he is killing these teenagers, quite frankly, because it's different. They keep the sack on the head like the original Jason did, for part 2 and half of part 3 until he got the hockey mask. I appreciated that, and you're right. This survivalist kind of tilt that they've put him on. He's setting bear traps. He's got his machete. He's moving quickly. I like it. It's an interesting, different interpretation. And if they just stuck with this for the most part of the film, I think it would have been good.
I totally agree.
But there's just not enough of it going forward from here. It's just, there's these 4 teens, and he kills that one guy out in the weed, and then the girl hanging from the fire, above the fire and stuff.
That's pretty full on, actually.
Yeah, it's taking that idea of, remember when he killed the girls in the sleeping bags by whacking them against the tree or whatever. It was a new take on that. Just, to make it a bit more horrific. And then, like I said, with the bear traps and the whole thing in the cabin with the machete coming up through the floorboards and stuff, that's what I loved. And I wish they'd kind of just stuck around the camp and had it be more about the camp. I know we said throughout the series that, not a lot of Jason's killing was actually done at the camp. It was really just more the Crystal Lake area. And the camp was mostly about his mother in the first one. But if they'd stuck around the camp a bit more, it would have been more interesting, right? It would have just felt a bit more like a remake. But instead, we're going to cut to a whole new set of kids and Jared Padalecki.
Yes, and as far as, I'm just trying to think back to the series. I mean, there's been some douchebags in the series, but there's a couple of real A-grade, genuine douchebags in the next batch of kids, and with Travis Van Winkle, who plays Trent, being A-grade douchebag of them all. Do you agree?
I totally agree. And furthermore, not only is Trent a total douchebag, all these people just do not feel like they would hang out with each other.
No,
right?
Not at all.
You got Trent the douchebag. You've got Jenna,
Killer Frost,
who's the nice girl going out with Trent. Bree, who's the slutty girl who steals Trent. And then you got Chewie the nerd.
I know. I know. He's always putting himself down and saying stuff like, I could never get a girl like that, not in a million years.
These characters are just crap. Absolute crap.
I kind of wish I liked them just a little bit more, because I really didn't really want to spend much time with any of these people. Whenever they showed up on screen, I couldn't quite understand them. I kept thinking to myself, who would want to hang out with Trent? I suppose he's got money. That's about it, yeah. But he's a dick. From start to finish, he's just not a nice person. Not even slightly. I mean, I could understand if you were being a dick maybe 60% of the time, and 40% of the time you're a nice guy, but he's not even a nice guy, even that. And he invites them up to his dad's kind of summer house, and he keeps scolding them over having fun and doing stuff.
I know.
He always says routinely, they're playing a drinking game, and he's take it outside, you'll ruin something. It's an that family heirloom. And I think Chewie falls over late in the film and falls on like a chair or something like that. And he kind of gets cranky about it, you know? Like, he's just an idiot.
I know. Jenna says to him at one point, like, why did you invite all these people here? Did you just want to show off how rich you are? And I'm like, yep, hit the nail right on the head there. This guy is just a douchebag who wants to show off how much money he has. But yeah, it's just so stupid. And then you got this couple, Nolan and Chelsea. They go out in the car because Trent tells them to, like, take the fuel down to the boat or whatever.
Yeah, that's right.
And don't take the boat out.
I know.
So they're like, well, when he told us to do that, naturally, we're going to go ahead and do it. And she just gets her kit off and goes naked skiing.
For no reason.
For no reason.
Like, it's not about having fun. It's about getting your kit off.
Getting your tits out.
And her kill is the best because she doesn't have like her top on, and she's like beneath the water, and then I think she's hiding from Jason underneath like the boards, and Jason kind of throws the knife or the machete straight down between the boards, straight into the head, and lifts her up, and she comes up like with her tits fully showing. I just didn't expect it when it happened. It was a good kill.
I know, just the way she pops up out of the water, tits bare, and then he sort of just like slides the machete out between the boys. You're just like, what was that? I also love that they pay homage to the fact that Jason's like a total dead shot, because like Nolan's driving the boat and Jason like manages to get an arrow through the head while they're moving on this boat. I'm like, yep, Jason was always a dead shot. Like, he would shoot you with a spear gun in the eye from, 100 yards away.
Yeah, he's pretty good, isn't he?
So it's a pretty good homage.
Now, we should take it back a little bit because I think we've kind of jumped forward slightly. Now, we actually meet Mr. Supernatural, Jared Padalecki, who plays a character named Clay Miller. And he's kind of come to town on the search for his sister, Whitney, who we soon learn was camping in the area 6 weeks ago and has gone missing. And he keeps going from like person to person, house to house, and being really intrusive. Like, rather than just like knocking on the door and if no one answers, you go away, he'll like knock on the door, no one answers, and like go around the back to try and find someone. And you know what I mean? It's just like, what are you doing, man? Like, seriously.
I know, like, as he gets in like a bit of a confrontation with Trent at this like local convenience store or something.
He's talking to the clerk, isn't he?
Yeah, and I get it, like, Trent's being a dick and Clay is calling him out on it. But you're right, at the same time, I'm like, do I really care about Clay? Like, because he's also, to an extent, being a bit of a dick.
Yes.
And then he's driving around on his motorbike and he gets pulled over by a cop.
Hey, might I add too, he's driving around on a motorbike without a helmet. I don't know why, but that kind of bothered me. It just bothered me for some reason.
He gets pulled over by a cop who says nothing about this, but instead is just like, why are you back here? It's been 6 weeks. We've been searching around. Nobody's here. Typical cop thing to say. I don't know if the cop's aware of Jason. It seems like certain community members know about Jason, but yeah, the cop's just like, nobody's here. We've searched. Like, go away already and stop bothering us. And he just disregards this completely.
Now, do you know what I actually did enjoy is that when Clay showed up to that old woman's house with the glasses and she gave like a really good speech about like stay away, I thought she was great. I actually kind of wish the film went more down that route about the history of like the community of Crystal Lake and how Jason had affected them from a living perspective. I think that would have been a really interesting angle, and you probably could have gone down the path of like House of a Thousand Corpses, where Clay shows up to the wrong house and kind of gets lured in with some like intel about his sister and gets taken hostage by something. You know what I mean? That would have been way more interesting than dealing with Trent and Chewie and Bree and Chelsea and Nolan and Lawrence. Would have been way more interesting than that. You know what I mean?
I agree. This woman did do a good job, and I have to say it's probably better than that. You remember that woman from part 5
yes,
who was always like, fuck this and fuck, get your fucking stew and clean the shit out of the chicken coop and It's what it made me think of, but like seriously done and way better.
When I was watching it, I thought the same thing. I kept thinking about the woman in part 5 and her idiot son who kept like being like a hillbilly, like on the tractor and stuff, and just being a total dickhead. And I thought, where is she? You know.
All right. Well, shall we check out some clips from the first half of the film?
Sounds good.
I've got a clip here of our new Pamela from the opening sequence.
They must be punished, Jason, for what they did to you, for what they did to me. Kill for mother.
Kill for mother.
Ooh, I'm scared, aren't you?
I wish it was Mummy. I wish he said kill for Mummy. You know, just like Betsy Palmer did in the first one, you know. Kill her, Mommy. Kill her. Like, that would have been better. But she goes with mother. It's a bit too psycho for my...
It is a little bit too psycho, isn't it? Yeah. Anyway, what's next?
This is a clip from that ridiculous sex scene from the beginning. Because that girl was, like, flailing around in the silhouette of the tent. But, this is what they say when they hear something outside.
Cool.
I'm not going to go out there with a boner.
We're not getting any until you do.
I forgot about that. I'd rubbed that from my memory. I'm not going out there with a boner. Oh my god.
So cliched.
Yeah.
But that's not the only sex talk, because Whitney and her boyfriend Mike are having a chat about it too.
Nice.
Have sex with your boyfriend in a cramped little tent.
Oh my god, it's so like it's pretty bad actually when you really get down to the nitty gritty of it. Like these men are borderline rapists. It's just they're being really pushy about like getting something like all the time. You know, it's not very nice, is it?
I know, and that's setting up the whole thing with Whitney's mother being sick, and then like later when Jared Padalecki's speaking with the cop, like, my mother died of cancer, and then Whitney didn't show up to the funeral. Like, that's just impossible. And I'm like, oh, shut up.
Yeah.
And then this clip from when he's actually asking if he can hang up one of the flyers in the window, and the clerk says this to him.
If it was up to me, you could wallpaper the whole place with him. But the owner makes the rules, and he's a real...
That's a great line. I remember when that happened, I actually giggled out loud. I thought it was quite funny.
I know, that store clerk was, he was killing it.
But again, man, like I don't mean to kind of go on about it. And as I said, the film isn't that bad. It's not awful, but a little bit more of the store clerk and a little bit more of that neighbor who kind of been wounded by Jason would have been way more interesting than what we actually got.
Yeah, it's exactly right. But instead, we move on to this redneck guy who has apparently been stealing some of Jason's weed and trying to sell it to random people as Jared Padalecki shows up. And man, they set up this, mulcher there that he's using.
Yeah.
And honestly, I thought, like, if that guy doesn't go in the mulcher, I'm going to be very upset. And he doesn't, but it comes back later. So
it does, yeah.
We'll get to that. But seriously, I was like, you set up this mulcher right here. Like, why not just use it immediately and let's move on? But no. Clay shows up there, speaks with this guy for a bit. The guy's very unhelpful. Tries to sell him some weed, to which Clay's like, no. And then, for no reason, this guy ends up in the attic talking about how he had sex with a mannequin. And then Jason shows up and kills him. And this is how Jason gets his mask in this film. Is that the bag gets ripped off his head, and he just finds it in this old junk attic. I kind of wish maybe it was just maybe they could have made this character Shelley.
Shelley.
Because that's kind of the lore of it. Shelley was the one who had the hockey mask. So I don't know. How did you feel about this? Like, Jason kills this guy and then finds his hockey mask.
Yeah,
in an attic full of junk.
It felt a bit pushed, truthfully. I mean, you kind of have to give Jason the hockey mask. I kind of wish he just had it on, like at the start of the film, without kind of explaining how he got it, or like I don't think it didn't really need to be spoon-fed to me. I didn't mind, like I liked that they used the sack, because you're right, that's how he was in the first two films, but he didn't find the hockey mask for the third one. The fact that they tried to redo it in this film just felt a little bit forced, and it didn't feel very natural, so I wasn't a big fan.
He's still pretty, like, deformed in his face, I guess, as well.
Yeah,
right?
you
They don't linger on it too long.
No, they don't. You didn't get a good look at him this time. You got a small look, but they cut away pretty quickly, and that was it. That was the last you saw of deformed Jason. I mean, he's a pretty stuffed up, physically kind of person, isn't he?
It was a bit Elephant Man, I thought. Right?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. I mean, clearly very scarred from, but they kind of set Jason up as this weird, almost victim, someone that we could kind of almost like sympathise with slightly due to the treatment from his mum and the camp counsellors and all that kind of stuff. They really do try and play the sympathy card a little bit with Jason. So even though he's this cold-hearted killer that wields a machete round like it's no tomorrow, with totally callous about it, sometimes you think the film is trying to get you to sympathise with him just a bit, but it's kind of hard to, isn't it?
I don't know what to make of it, because you're right, they do try to play the sympathy card a bit at in that opening montage with the death of Pamela.
Yeah, totally.
But then he's just this ruthless killer.
He's killed 167 people. He should be thrown in jail, never to be seen again. You know what I mean?
So anyway, next thing you know, wouldn't you know it, he shows up at the house. Clay shows up at the house, and he's like, "Oh, it's you guys again from the store." And Jenna tries to be nice to him and says, "Hey, come on in, I'll get you a cold glass of water," or something like that. And again, Trent is just a dick to him and says, like, "This is a private party, like, get out."
Yeah, don't make me angry. You don't want to make me angry. Oh my God, you are a douchebag.
I hate this guy.
I just want to punch you in the nose.
It's something I really don't like in slasher films, is when you've got a character so just repulsive as a human being that you can't wait to see them die.
Yeah.
Because that's all they're there for. And that is literally all Trent is here for, is to be a dick, and then we get to see him get killed.
I keep thinking, man, of like what this film could have been if they'd kind of just made a few different decisions, and rather than going like the douchebag teenagers that just want to get drunk all day, every day and smoke pot, like if they went down the grounds of Jared Padalecki with his girlfriend, who happened to be Killer Frost, you know what I mean? Show up to town looking for his sister, and they meet all the locals and stuff. That would have been a much more interesting scenario, because Jared Padalecki, or Clay, I keep calling him Jared Padalecki, but his character name is Clay. He shows up to Trent's house, and Trent is super pissed off with him, like, go away. But for whatever reason, out of nowhere, the girl, Killer Frost, Jenna somehow like sympathizes with him, or I kind of just think that she just looks at him and kind of wants to fuck him a little bit.
It's weird. She just leaves with him.
Yeah, leaves.
Just like, "Hey, stranger, sure, I'll go with you while you go and ask people about your missing sister. Why not?"
Yeah, exactly.
And as soon as she's gone, Trent is like, getting all handsy with Bree.
Oh my God, he like immediately, and she's kind of like doing all these dances for all the boys, and next thing you know, they're in the bedroom, and he keeps like staring at her, just going, "You've got the best tits," and all that kind of
stupendous.
Stuff.
Like, he says it like 3 times to her, and she's filming it.
Oh no.
It's such a weird sequence as they all just get drunk and those two are just going at it. Because Jenna and Clay end up over at the old camp, and they're walking around, and Jason shows up.
Yes, they don't expect him to, do they? He just shows up out of nowhere, and they have to hide. Like don't they hide like underneath like a tractor or something like that?
It was like a rack of canoes.
Yeah, that's it.
And Jason shows up and throws down a corpse, which I can only assume is the corpse of Nolan or Chelsea. So they're totally freaked out. And Jason has a bit of a sequence where he turns on the floodlights and he's throwing canoes around trying to find them. And we kind of get this glimpse of Whitney tied up in Jason's underground tunnels.
For 6 weeks. She doesn't look very disheveled for being kind of away for 6 weeks. Like, is Jason feeding her? Like, is he giving her food? Like, is Jason preparing food? Like, does he have a kitchen? what's going on here, man? I'm a bit confused by the concept. I actually didn't buy it at all. I was actually a bit disappointed when I saw that Whitney was alive, because I just thought there's no way Jason would have kept like a hostage or a prisoner. That's just not in his MO, you know what I mean?
I know. Well, and the weird thing is they set up the locket, right, which I think was supposed to have a picture of Pamela Voorhees in it, and her boyfriend kind of had this passing thing of like, hey, that kind of looks like you should keep it, right?
Yeah.
So she's got this pendant with the photo in it, and it's at this moment that Jason sees the pendant, and I was thinking like, okay, maybe he kept her alive because he saw the pendant and then realized the resemblance to his own mother, but he's only just realizing it now after 6 weeks. Why has he been keeping her hostage for 6 weeks? Until this moment, like, when you're going to give us a reason for him having done that. Like, I don't know.
I kind of find it a bit strange that Jason decided to kind of keep this woman around. He's kind of getting her confused with his mum who died 20 years ago. I mean, I think one thing is for certain about the Jason series is that Jason's not stupid. He's a pretty clever guy. Like, he's handy with, survivaling and actually luring people and setting traps. And, like, he's not a dummy. You know what I mean? Like, he might be misguided, but he's not a dummy, I don't think. So the concept of him, like, mistooking someone for his mum who died 25 years ago is strange. I just think it's strange. I mean, maybe he's kind of keeping her around just for comfort, but does Jason need comfort? Maybe he does. I don't know. I've never thought of Jason needing comfort. What do you think?
Me neither. And I guess at the end of the day, it's just another, like, WTF thing about this movie. Why did he keep her alive? I don't know. Why did he make tunnels under Camp Crystal Lake and live there? I don't know. Why is he growing pot? I don't know.
So it's a bit strange.
It's just totally illogical.
So we have Clay and Jenna who know that something is up at the abandoned camp house, and Jenna and Clay run back very quickly to warn all of the others about a crazy man running around on the grounds killing people, who of course the rest of the guys don't believe Clay and Jenna. And when Clay and Jenna show up back at Trent's place, Trent kind of doesn't he kind of tell them to go away, essentially, both of them?
Well, yeah, because he's having sex with Bree, right, in the room. Jenna's banging on the door saying, hey, come on out, like, we need to get going. This chick is so stupid. It takes her forever to get that penny drop that he was having sex with Bree in the room. Like, I am like, how freaking stupid are you?
Yeah, it's pretty dumb.
You come back, knock on the door, say, hey guys, come out here. He literally tells her to fuck off, and she doesn't get what they're doing in there. Stupid.
Jenna and Clay have been told to go away, but meanwhile, you've got Chewie and Lawrence who are kind of outside the cabin. Now, Chewie got banished to, I think he broke the chair, and Trent kind of scolded him, like as we mentioned before, saying, man, you better be Mr. MacGyver, man, and fix this chair. So Chewie goes out to, the outhouse where all the
tool shed.
The tool shed, I should say, and he gets lured out, and he mucks around. He's playing basketball, and he's doing what are you doing, dude? Just get what you need to get and leave, Yeah. Anyway, so he gets killed by Jason in a fairly gruesome fashion, might I add, too.
I know, Jason...
It's pretty gross, actually.
Yeah, pulls him up, stabs him in the neck with a screwdriver. Yeah, it's pretty full on.
Next thing, we've got Lawrence, who is, without being too mean or nasty, he's the token black guy, yeah? Is that right?
And what makes it worse about being the trope of the token black guy is that this guy calls out that he is the token black guy, and that he is in no way a cliche of a black guy. Like, the first 3 things he has to say in this movie, his first 3 lines are defending the fact that he is not a cliched black guy. It's weird. He's
got this really weird scene too where he's kind of by himself, and he's been smoking pot, and he wants to masturbate.
I know. This is weird.
I know, and he finds like any magazine he can kind of get, and kind of is just flicking through anything to try to find any picture that he can kind of masturbate to, and he finds this really not a strange picture, but certainly not the most alluring picture, and he sort of says, "She'll do," or something like that.
It's like a woman in like winter clothes drinking a hot cocoa or something. You're like, what?
Something like that. It's really odd. And he kind of looks around and he said, like, checks that he's by himself. Then he checks that he's got his tissues and all that kind of stuff. And then for whatever reason, he decides against it because I think he gets interrupted by someone. But
yeah,
it's a
they
really
come running
strange
in
thing.
to tell him about Jason.
Yeah. So we've got Lawrence who kind of goes out to kind of investigate, and what happens to him, man? He gets an axe thrown into the back and then forced through. It's pretty full on, man. Like,
yeah,
I said it before, but the kills in this film are kind of next level gross. Like a lot more gross than the previous films, definitely. A lot more violent.
Well, might I mention too is that they come running in. They're like, "Hey, there's a guy out there with a corpse walking around. We've got to call the police." He's going on about like, "Hey, I just smoked. Are you messing with me because I've been smoking?" And then he arms himself with a wok, like like no weapon, no nothing. He's just like, "I'm gonna take my wok shield and go outside to find my boy Chewie."
It's strange.
And then he's wondering why he's getting an axe thrown in the back. So what an idiot!
I know. So we've got Lawrence outside the cabin and he gets an axe in his chest, and Trent, Clay and Jenna actually escape the cabin, but Trent is actually killed when he reaches the main road.
Well, Bree gets killed inside first, right?
Oh, that's right.
Like Jason ends up inside, and Bree's freaking out, and he like pushes her through like the antlers of a deer head that's on the wall, and that's when they freak out and run away. And yeah. I think the cop shows up too, right?
Yeah, you're right.
He shows up and Jason like uses like a fireplace poker or something and stabs him in the back of the head.
It's pretty intense. And then we have Trent, who we really hate, is lifted and impaled through the back with a machete, and then impaled through the back on a spike on the back of a truck that drives away. No, he just puts him on the back on some guy's truck who drives away at 1,000,000 miles an hour. And you never know who this person is.
I know, it's like some old dude with like an oxygen tank going or something. And Trent just gets like killed by Jason, thrown in on the spike on the back of this guy's tow truck, and the guy just hightails it out of there.
I know, it's crazy.
Like, who is this guy, this old dude?
Yeah, so after all of these kills, Jason actually chases Clay and Jenna back to the campgrounds, or to his secret lair, I should say. Clay actually discovers Jason's lair and finds his sister chained to a wall. And Clay then obviously frees Whitney as fast as he can, and all three try to escape as Jason arrives. And it's actually not a bad little sequence. I actually didn't mind this whole kind of in the tunnels kind of thing. It was actually not too bad.
And I have to admit, when Jenna gets killed, I was genuinely surprised.
Yeah, I didn't expect that.
I really thought Whitney would end up just being killed, and it would be down to Jenna and Clay, and Jenna would probably be the last girl. So when she got killed, kudos to the movie. I was surprised.
Yeah, I didn't expect them to actually do that, but yeah, they kind of made that decision and killed out of nowhere as well. It really happened quite quickly. We are up to 14 kills in this film so far. We've only got one to go, don't we?
Yeah, pretty much. It's just the big showdown between Whitney and Clay and Jason. And they have this whole fight in the barn with the wood chipper where Jason's trying to put Clay in there, and then Whitney gets her hands on the machete, and then I think they wrap a chain up around Jason's neck and hang him. And I thought, and logic would say this, but Jason's been pulled into the wood chipper by the chain, and he is struggling to not go into it. So Whitney stabs him through the chest with his machete and says, "Say hi to Mummy in hell." And then Jason dies, but doesn't get pulled into the wood chipper?
Yeah, I kind of found it a bit strange how that happened. I kind of thought that, like, when that wood chipper was going and he was getting pulled in, I thought, man, this is going to be gross. You know what I mean?
I get it. They can't have him go through a wood chipper because they couldn't bring him back to life for a sequel. But then why have him struggling so hard to not go into the wood chipper, be killed, and then not get sucked into it? Like, as soon as he stopped struggling to go in there, he should have been pulled in. But hey, logic doesn't matter in this film, apparently.
No, it doesn't. So we think Jason is dead. So Clay and Whitney leave the campgrounds and they go to like dispose of Jason's body, and they go to the end of this like this wooden dock, right? And it's clearly Camp Crystal Lake, the end of the dock where they always go, and they throw Jason into the lake, expecting him to like sink to the bottom and never be seen again. As they turn, and spoiler alert, I'm sorry to tell you guys, but Jason's alive because he jumps up out of nowhere, grabs Whitney, and that's the end of the film.
That's it. Cut to black.
I didn't like it, actually. I would have been okay with both of them just walking away and then just having a shot of Jason and he like opens his eyes or something. Like, you know, that would have been fine. But they were clearly trying to do a bit of a homage to the first film. Is that right?
Yeah, I guess.
Is that what you were thinking?
Yeah, Jason just jumps out of the water and, you know, it's how the other... Yeah, I don't know.
Almost kind of felt like there was another chapter that they just decided not to tell. And it was a really unsatisfying end because you don't really know what occurs. Like, they kind of went through this journey.
Yeah, and the fact that we didn't even really know Whitney at all. Like, we got to know Jenna more. That's why I was surprised she got killed.
I know.
So do I care about Whitney at the end? Not really. Do I even care about Clay, though? I have gotten to know him and I don't care. So
I mean, he was okay. He wasn't that bad. But I know what you mean.
Well, final clips?
Oh, yeah, final clips, of course.
Final clips. I've only got 2 more clips because, quite frankly, nobody really had anything interesting to say.
Nice.
So I've got this one. This is Donnie, the redneck.
Jesus Christ. Fucking lucky there, Stretch. Came about that close to hitting the start button on a whoop-ass machine, boy.
Nice.
I thought that was a funny line.
Yeah, cool.
And then Chewie said this when he was... After he breaks the chair, he says this.
You won't be disappointed. They don't call me the Wood Wizard because I masturbate a lot.
Oh, fuck it. The Wood Wizard. What the fuck?
I can fix the chair because I'm the Wood Wizard.
Yeah.
So that's it. That's all I got in the way of clips. So that leads us to ratings recommend. What do you have to say?
I'm going to let you go first on this. You lead the way.
So, Friday the 13th, the remake. Not really a remake, like I said. I thought this was more of a reimagining. They took elements from several films to bring it in here. Of course, the killer is Jason. They want to make the killer Jason because that's who they want to champion in this. You know, I get it. They couldn't do a remake of the original because it's already spoiled. We already know that the killer is Pamela Voorhees, so why try to make that movie again? So, is this a good Friday the 13th film? I don't think so. It kind of feels like they were trying to go for something new, and like I said at the beginning, I liked Jason, like, as a killer, as the survivalist kind of guy out in the woods, killing people over, you know, a territorial kind of thing. But then they just go ahead and make this cliched, you know, teenagers, bunch of kids that I don't really like. You know, we've seen groups of kids in previous Friday the 13th sequels that I liked a hell of a lot more than any of the people I liked in this movie. And it's just, yeah, it's a poor imitation of the original. You know, I tell people to go back and watch all of the original ones before watching this remake because they're better. Yeah, that's it. I kind of wish that they just made another sequel, in my opinion. If this is what they were going to do, why not just make another sequel to Friday the 13th? Why not just keep going? You know, why go back? Why try to reimagine it or anything like that? Or even just make Jason this new survivalist back in the woods for the sequel, you know, whatever. It's a poor remake, and there's no point watching it. So I'm going to give this 4 fiery sleeping bags out of 10.
I think I'm going to go slightly higher than you. I'm kind of hovering around the 6 Wood Wizards out of 10 for this. I didn't mind it. I just kind of wish they made a few different choices. I mean, I think we've been fairly negative throughout the review, and it's certainly not perfect at all. And if they just made a few different choices, it would have been considerably more enjoyable. I like Derek Mears as Jason. I thought his physicality to the role added like a new element that I hadn't seen before. So from the perspective of someone that's just watched 11 films in a row, bringing something slightly new to the series was an interesting kind of idea. And I thought Derek Mears did a very capable kind of job, certainly better than Ken Kersinger did.
A step up from last week's movie for sure.
Oh man, total step up, but also a step down from what Kane Hodder brought to the role for 4 films, who did such a capable job. So
yeah, it's still not a big enough step up from what Ken Kersinger was doing last week to get back to Kane Hodder.
I just kind of wish, man, my big takeaway from this film is what could have been. It's not great. As I said, it's a 4 for you. It's probably a 6. It's a 6 for me. I think I liked it slightly more than you, but I think we both agree that if they just made a few different choices, and if they just left the baggage, there's 11 films of baggage to kind of consider. So you either take all of the baggage and kind of just accept everything, or you just take nothing from it and tell you nothing. Like if this was just Jason in a cabin in the woods, being a badass trying to protect his territory without all the stupidity of Betsy Palmer and Adrian King, like, you know what I mean? Having all that stuff kind of alludes to the fact that you're accepting all of the lore, where this film doesn't really accept all of it, only accepts part of it. It kind of just takes the bits it wants to take and kind of leave other parts out of it. And that didn't really sit very well with me. So you either accept everything or you accept nothing. But this film didn't do that. But as I said, probably 6 wood wizards out of 10. For me. Now, I'm going to ask you one more question, Corey, because this is clearly the end of our Friday the 13th discussion. Now, clearly, if they make any more movies, we'll continue to kind of talk about it. But if you had to maybe do top 3 of the series, if you like top 3 films in the Friday the 13th series to watch, what would you say?
Okay, top 3. Oh, this is a tough call. I'd say watch the original. I really like the original. You didn't like it so much. But I think the original is probably the best, and you know that's not even a Jason movie. So
I think I kind of come from the perspective of I just didn't really like the filmmaking that much, but the story is fine. It's a classic for a reason, and I respect that, you know.
So I have to put the original up at number 1.
Yeah.
Let's say my number 2 is I'd say part 3. You know, I like that one with the barn and Shelley and all that. It's kind of a guilty pleasure one for me.
Yeah, nice.
I do enjoy that one. And then I'm going to say part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan.
Wow.
As ridiculous that was.
Jason on a boat.
Yeah, you know, I like the cheesy ones.
Yeah. Now, I'm also going to kind of put you on the spot too. Best kill of the series.
Oh,
I know. I should have given you some warning, shouldn't I?
You should have given me some warning.
I know what mine is. My best kill is probably Jason X.
The liquid nitrogen?
Yeah, that's my favourite kill. Because
I do really like that. That would be a close runner-up. I'm gonna go with part 8, where old mate gets his head punched off.
Wow, nice. Oh yeah, totally. I forgot about that. You're right. That's a good one, isn't it?
Pretty good one. A close runner-up, liquid nitrogen face, and then after that, maybe Kevin Bacon getting the arrow through his neck. That one was pretty good.
Now, for me, my top 3 is probably, I actually really like the sequel. I liked the second one because it's 2 and 3 are the only films in the whole series that actually have a consecutive director. I think Steve Miner did both of those films, and I really liked Friday the 13th Part 2. I thought it was a really good film that engaged me. I don't remember too much about it now because it was 12 films ago. Or 11 films, but I did enjoy it. I also liked the one where Corey Feldman showed up. I think 4 and 6 are both kind of fun films. 6 is the one where Jason's in the cemetery and kind of gets brought back to life by the lightning bolt.
Yeah. I tried to kill him, but I fucked up.
That's exactly right. I like that one. And a guilty pleasure, you know how 3 is your guilty pleasure? I actually really liked Jason X. It just worked for me for whatever reason. I just enjoyed the different premise and Jason in a different environment. So I think it's kind of interesting that we've got very different lists. I think we kind of agree that most of these films are kind of okay. I mean, there's some stinkers in there too, like 5 is bad.
Oh, yeah, is 5 bad? 7.
7's
Psychic.
Yeah, that's bad too.
It was pretty nasty.
Yeah. Anyway, it is what it is. So I think we've enjoyed our rewatch, haven't we?
We have. I think regardless of it being good or bad, I think it's a good solid series. If you want to do a binge or whatever, you know, or you've been watching week to week with us, I still think it's a lot of fun to do. This is a great series to do that for, you know.
Nice.
But we do have to move on, I guess. So, up next, we are going to be discussing 4 films which, I don't know, this could be interesting. We're going to discuss Lethal Weapon.
Yeah, no, we've been talking about this for a while. Bit of Riggs and Murtaugh. I haven't watched these films for a long, long time. So the plan is to watch the 4 original release Lethal Weapon films. The one that was released in 1987, Lethal Weapon 2 in 1989, Lethal Weapon 3 in 1992, and then they waited 6 years to make Lethal Weapon 4.
Awesome. All right.
Cool. Good.
So for more great podcasts from Golden Spiral Media, make sure you head over to goldenspiralmedia.com/Apple. You can join us on Facebook at facebook.com/rewatchpodcast and on Twitter at rewatchpod. And also, if you'd give us a rate and review on your podcast app of choice, that's always very helpful. Really helps out the show. All right, Nathan, thank you for joining me for this this wonderful Friday the 13th rewatch.
It's been
looking
good.
forward to Lethal Weapon.
Are you going to miss Jason a bit? Maybe a bit?
Little bit.
Just a bit, yeah.
I don't know. Riggs and Murtaugh.
Yeah,
I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, no, it'd be good. As I said, man, it's been a while, so I'm looking forward to it.
So that just leaves me to say, until next time, say hi to Mummy in hell.
We just want to be left alone, and so does he.
Golden Spiral Media and the Rewatch podcast are not associated with the copyright holders of these films, and no copyright infringement is intended.
They were making love while that young boy drowned.
The use of any and all copyrighted material is solely for parody, news analysis, critique, or educational purposes, as provided in United States Code Title 17, aka Fair Use.
It's gonna take more than poking the ribs to put down this old dog.
Music provided by Kevin MacLeod at Incompetech.com.
Cool, JJ. Parents really came through.
Copyright 2017 Golden Spiral Media.
You a dead meat slime bag!